once again by a man who a couple of weeks ago sat here right next to me in the studio, and he is now who knows where, probably in Washington, D.C., where he is senior political analyst for the Washington Examiner. And, of course, when he was here, we were talking about his great new book, Shaping Our Nation, How Surges of Migration Transformed America and Its Politics. We welcome in the one and only Michael Barone. Hey, Michael, how are you, sir? Ooh, all that introduction, and I hope he heard me at least. But
I did indeed.
There you are. Okay, now I hear you. Okay, good to have you back, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about the great piece that you wrote the other day about the unions, and very interesting. As we go through what we're going through, and we'll talk about where we are with some new revelations about Obamacare and the fallacy of it all today, coming from CBS News and elsewhere. But the unions. Why are the unions so upset over this whole thing, and why are they ticked off at the administration?
Well, they're upset because some of the terms and conditions of Obamacare, hastily passed, sloppily put together legislation, hurts them and hurts their comparative advantage over non-union employers, or what they regard as such, on contracts. I mean, the Obamacare legislation will, after a delay, impose a tax on the so-called Cadillac plans. Well, you know, unions, when they've tried to organize private sector firms, have said, hey, we'll negotiate these health care plans that you contribute no money towards and that pay for lots and lots of things, the so-called Cadillac plans. Well, they're disfavored under Obamacare. In addition, there's a tax that is imposed or not imposed on the union contracts that hurts them. They've been seeking care from it, and so you got people like James Hoffa, the head of the teachers union, saying that this and leaders of two other unions that total 2.9 million members, writing a letter in July saying you really got to fix this. Now, of course, that leads to the question: why did the unions support this thing in the first place? I think part of the explanation is that they were playing team ball on the Democratic team. There's also an historic reason that I think reflects perhaps a little better on union leaders' motivations, which is that their movement has consistently, back from the 1940s, and tried to extend to non-union workers benefits that they believe come from union membership. They supported raising the minimum wage, for example. Back in the 50s, they thought this would help them goose up the wages of the industrial workers they represented. They supported things like the ERISA pension law in the 1970s, which standardized the treatment of private sector pensions. They supported things like OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And in the process, it meant that workers didn't really need unions to negotiate safety conditions as much as they did formerly. They didn't need unions as much as they did formerly.
Right. So you're pointing out that
pension plans.
Right. So you're pointing out that there were good intentions in supporting Obamacare to give the benefits to others and the protection to others that they had, in effect, or a lot of them have.
In effect, they've lost some of their business advantage, some of their comparative advantage in business. And they did so, and I think those of us who've opposed most of the public policy stands of unions have to give them some credit. They did so in part out of something like altruistic motives. This refutes somewhat the assumption of some economists that everybody just seeks to enhance their own economic interest without respect to other people. The unions did this to some extent, and to some extent they've done themselves out of business.
Yeah, and you talk about firefighters and dentists, which I think are two great examples that you give about how we've gone above and beyond to make buildings fireproof, et cetera. Of course, there's a great need for firefighters. Don't get me wrong, but there are less firefighters, as you point out, and that with fluoride in the water and other accommodations for oral hygiene, fewer people are in as great need of a dentist as often as they used to be. So those are two great analogies. But let's talk about so in July. They go to the Obama administration, the unions do, and they say, we're ticked off, and we want the same kind of exemption that you gave to businesses And basically, why did the Obama administration say no to their buddies?
Well, I think the answer is that it was one stretch too far, that the unions are not perhaps as big a constituency as they used to be, and they figured, well, they're on board our Democratic team, and if they don't like it, well, tough. It's a little hard sometimes to fathom the decision-making process of the Obama team. I mean, the president the president under the Constitution has an obligation to faithfully execute the laws.
Right.
And the laws of Obamacare says the employment mandate comes into effect on January 1st, 2014. And the Obama administration announces on a pre-4th of July, Friday afternoon blog post that it's not going to enforce that part of the law. Senator Tom Harkin, Democrat of Iowa, says they can't do that. The law says they're supposed to do that. Well, Senator Harkin had a point, but they just went ahead and did it, and sort of, banking on the hope that nobody would have standing to contest this in court, and that they could just get away with it in the confidence that the great and the good, in the form of New York Times editorial writers and so forth, would not mind them. Not faithfully executing the law.
We're talking to Michael Barone, senior political analyst, the Washington Examiner, author of a very, very important new book, Shaping Our Nation: How Surges of Migration Transformed America and Its Politics, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Okay, so since you and I sat together here, the government shutdown ended, the debt ceiling raised, and the horrific revelations of the Obamacare website, but it goes beyond that. CBS News reporting today that the prices, the shop and browse feature, if you could get on the website, it often comes with wrong price tags. They give you two age groups, if you're either 50 and over or 49 and under, and then based on that selection, you get policy priced in for a typical 27-year-old if you're under 50, and a typical 50-year-old if you're 50 or over. And in reality, CBS News found out that a senior citizen could get a quote that's 50%, or let's put it this way, get a quote, and then it turns out to be double that or more. So the whole thing is just insane.
Well, there's an old saying, it's good enough for government work. It looks like this is not good enough for government work. And, put this thing in historic perspective, Steve. They've had 42 months to implement Obamacare and get ready from the passage of the legislation in March 2010 until October 1st. Back in the 1940s, the government built the Pentagon in 18 months.
Yeah, but Kathleen
It's still the world's largest office building in square footage. 18 months, but in 42 months they couldn't do Obamacare. It suggests that the idea of progress is not universally applicable, at least to the federal government.
Well, Kathleen Sebelius yesterday, during her interview with Sanjay Gupta, the same Sanjay Gupta who's now on a mission to try to make Dick Cheney look like he was getting a lack of oxygen to the brain all the time he was the vice president because of his heart condition. Nonetheless, Kathleen Sebelius said, ideally we would have wanted 5 years. That's what she actually said, 5 years to get it rolled out correctly. Man, you start up a business, you get your website up in 6 months. I don't get this.
FDR and the American people won World War II in about half the time of 5 years. I think, if she wanted 5 years, she should have asked for it back when they were pasting together the Senate, what was ultimately passed as Obamacare, the Senate version in December 2009, and put it in there with the Louisiana Purchase and the Cornhusker kickback.
Let me ask you one more question. How badly did the Republicans blow it and lose, do you think? And how will it affect 2014, if at all?
I think they blew it to some extent. I think that they're taking something of a licking in public opinion on this. I think the strategy to, when the House Republicans put themselves under cruise control, as you might say, and demanded the defunding of Obamacare as part of the continuing resolution to continue funding the government, I think that was a tactical mistake, and I think they're paying some price. I think that we still have 13 months till those 2014 congressional elections, and I think that what is happening with Obamacare and what will happen in the next few months, which I can't predict with utter confidence, is probably going to have more bearing on those elections than the
Yep.
fallout from the shutdown.
All right, Michael, great to talk to you again, sir. We'll speak soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Take care. Michael Barone, ladies and gentlemen, senior political analyst, Washington Examiner, shaping our nation, how surges of migration transformed America and its politics, and still doing it, by the way. That's his book out, and its politics, and still doing it, by the way. That's his book out. The offensive against Obamacare had quite a funny bit the other day. We'll let you hear it right here. And you want to weigh in? I'd love to hear from you on the Steve Malzberg Show. 877 Newsmax, 877-639-7629. Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV, and